I bet you can't guess the theme for this week's bookmarks, can you? But before you go, oh, I hate Valentine's Day, oh, hearts are mushy, you can do any of these designs with any shape. You can do with circles. You can do it with squares, rectangles. Yes, they're hearts. Yes, it's February. Last week, I showed you how to make corner bookmarks based on landscapes. And just to show how they work, we've got the little corner and they go over like that to keep your place. And the joy of these is that you don't have to think of long, thin subjects to paint on traditional shaped bookmarks. These are tiny, yes, but they are a slightly more forgiving shape. So if you haven't seen that, please take a look. And everyone said, oh, let's try some more. So this week I thought we would do hearts, but these hearts are different because of the shape of a heart. It definitely has an up and a down. I've made them to go on the bottom corner of your book. And because they are corners, look, they don't fall out. If you were doing squares, circles, whatever, of course you can put them at the top. But I don't know, an upside down heart doesn't work for me. Before we do the decoration, we need to sort out the functional bit, the bit that goes over the corner. And I've got 3 ways of doing that. The most obvious is to cut a piece of watercolour paper. I like my bookmarks to be 7.5 centimetres square, and 7.5 is about 3 inches. You basically have 2 squares joined together, and this is the little tab that you will stick it together. Just make sure that all your folds are very firmly pressed down, and I can just use the end of a pair of scissors to make sure they're really firm. If your paper is thick, this is 300 grams watercolour paper, score it to help you with the folding. But maybe you want to do something a little different. Frankly, the easiest is to get an old envelope, make sure it is fully stuck down, and then we can cut it in 4. And we've got the basis of our little triangle. Don't worry about the bit you've stuck down, or not in my case. We can stick a piece of watercolour paper over the top so that won't be visible. And of course, if you've got really good quality envelopes, this isn't, you might actually be able to watercolour directly on the envelope, and that's really easy. You're halfway there. The third method is a little bit of origami. And the advantage of this, let me show you one of my little landscapes, is that you can coordinate the backing paper and make it decorative so that it just adds to the whole little corner bookmark. And folding is really easy. You can get a stack like this for terribly cheaply. What's that? 400 sheets for £5. They are 15 centimetres square. So if you haven't got any origami paper, do not fret at all. Just cut a piece of photocopier paper or some other thin coloured paper that coordinates with your project. You cannot do this out of watercolour paper because we're going to fold it and our watercolour paper is way too thick. First thing you do is fold it in half. The more accurate you are with your folds, the better the outcome, which is a shame for me because I am not a terribly accurate person by nature. So you take the point and bring it up to the corner. You take the other point and bring it up to the corner. Open it up. Bring that corner down. Then take this corner and tuck it behind and make sure it goes right to the bottom. Do exactly the same with that one. Open it up, fold it over, make sure it goes right down to the bottom and get a nice crisp fold. You have your corner. How easy is that? We've done the function, let's do the fun. These two are pretty much the same, except different. That's That's helpful, isn't it? I have got a little cutter, I think little pastry cutter or little sweet cutter in the shape of a heart. And that's what I printed this one with. But you may not have that. But I bet you have the middle of an old toilet roll. And if you fold it flat like that, open it up, push the top down, squeeze the bottom, of course you get a heart shape. And I've printed, because it's actually quite hard to draw wonky, so I thought printing would be quite nice to get these slightly wonkier hearts. I've got a little bit of watercolour. If you're using pans, that is absolutely fine, but you want it really good and thick. I'm only adding a tiny bit of water. So we've got our corner, and I will use this one. No, I've got a dirty hand already. And remember, we're going to have the corner at the bottom because our hearts need to be upright. Put a little on there and print. And we do not need it to be perfect. In fact, we are aiming for not perfection. We can overlap. Where's that bit not particularly printing? It's right side. Let me make more of an effort. In fact, overlapping them's rather fun. Do some single, some double. You could do some coming off the page. And then I'll let that dry a little. Let's do the larger one. So again, we're just making sure that corner is down the bottom. So I'm going to be printing onto here. If it goes a bit scraggly like it has the other end, because as it gets wet it will, of course you can just snip the ends off and you've got a fresh bit there, so it should last quite a while. I'm going to add a little bit more water to this. Dip it in, print. Again, overlap, do as many as you want. Wouldn't make them too even, and I'll let that just dry off a little because I want the outlines. I don't want to lose those. So coming back to this one, grab your paint box, give it a little spritz, decide what colours you're doing. I'm going to go again these oranges, pinks, purples. So I'm going to fill in some of the shapes where they overlap. Maybe fill in some of those gaps. Then grab a different colour. And if some of that colour starts to merge, that doesn't matter either, because that is the joy of watercolour. I would definitely leave some white. I think it's quite nice to do the background as well. So I'm just going to do a pale pink around them. When you're happy with the final result, stop and let it dry. If you look at it and think, oh, I want a bit more outline, steady hand and go back. Once that's dry, all we have to do is stick there. This was the rough one that we did. Again, we could just do some of the overlaps like this. If you wanted a more complex pattern, you could then go back and print over the top with another colour. Or, like I did on this one, I have got some rather gorgeous Kuretake gold ink, which is leaking out of the lid. Well, yeah, that wasn't meant to happen. Right, let's not panic. And I have put it in a little bottle with a needle spout. It needs a really good shake because it separates a lot. I'm going to have to make that into a proper dot. These are huge dots. Oh well, never mind. But this is quite fun to draw with if you want a mucky, dotty drawing. So this ended up a little muckier and a little dottier than I was intending. So let's put some small dots as well. Could do that with a brush. But I quite like the splodgy thick and thin. It takes ages to dry. I actually left that overnight. If you've got a gold acrylic pen, you could do that. Gold jelly roll pen. Or you could do it with black ink and have a very dramatic red and black. If you want to finish it off and you've got a corner punch, I think it's quite nice to punch the corner on both the front and the back. Just rounds it off. Then all you need to do is apply some glue to the flap and stick it down. So let's look at the heart one that we did. Now you can see I use that gold ink for this heart, but we could do it with watercolour. So just make sure that's our bottom corner. And what I did is draw 2 diagonals across that top square, just very lightly so I can erase it. I'm going to use this as the centre of my heart. And I'm coming down and drawing that sort of freehand. Because I've got those diagonals there, I can make sure the shape looks pretty good. Then can carefully cut round the heart. And here I only cut to the diagonal. I just thought that made it look nicer. And then round. Just check on the back. That will also help you see whether you've cut a good shape or not. If you want a space to write across there, so the idea is you could write, I love you, or I love reading books, grab a little bit of washi tape and stick it across where you want it to be. Let's use the red I've got here. We can paint our heart and just paint straight over the washi tape. This one I then dropped in purple and dropped in colours wet in wet. So you are learning all the time when you're doing this. It is a sort of craft project. It is a bit of fun, but you do learn good watercolour techniques. Oh, come on, that's pretty. Oh, I'm getting carried away now. So you could splatter into it. You could drop little bits of salt in it. That would be nice to get a speckly effect. This one, I just used a black waterproof fine liner to draw a design over it. I have to say, I don't think that's the best design I've ever done in the world. What I might do is a very simple botanical. These are leaves, in case you're wondering. Then I'm going to use a glue stick. You could use white glue on there. Stick it down. Right, so let's use one of our squares. I'm going to stick a piece of watercolour paper that's slightly smaller so I get a nice border. Just going to do some freehand hearts. Nothing exciting really, just different colour, quite wishy-washy hearts. And I'm going to let them touch so that the colours will flow into each other. If you don't like the randomness of these, of course you could do like a little row of, I don't know, 3 hearts across and 3 down, so you've got a little square of 9 really regularly. Once it's dry, let's just repeat that process. Do it gently so that the different layers show through. It is good practice for your layering and your patience. Seeing that's going to be drying, why don't I use this one? So I need to trim it down. We've got the corner in the right place. And we can stick those down. Gosh, we're getting quite a collection, aren't we? After I stopped filming last night, I thought, rather than just say, oh, you could do one of these sort of hearts in a grid, I'm actually going to do it. So I did that, and now I am just doodling on top of them, and I've got my last one to do. So I'm just doing very rudimentary patterns on top just to finish them off. I'm using a waterproof black pen. You could use a white gel pen, that would kind of be pretty, or a black pen with a white gel pen, or a metallic. The choice is yours. Stick that down, being extra careful of the edges. This is the red heart with the splodges, which I rather like. I would warm your tape with your hairdryer first, just to make sure it doesn't tear the paper. And do it slowly, just in case it's being temperamental. So we could say, I love you. I love to read. That's how our gold ink and red one dried, and I really like that. Do you remember I did a splodge by mistake? With all our corner bookmarks made, there is one final thing to consider. Do you want to seal them in some way? Because there you are, reading in the bath, and it's all hot and steamy. Perhaps the watercolour might get a bit damp. Close it up and the colour might come off on your pages. Won't matter when it's a painting book particularly, but it might be upsetting if you've borrowed a book off a friend. We've got different options. Could spray varnish if you've got some spray varnish, and I would use matte because it keeps it looking like watercolour, unless of course you've used metallic and want it to shine. Or you can use a brush on acrylic varnish. You can get special watercolour varnish, but I really wouldn't worry about that. Just go careful it doesn't smear if you use a brush on one, so a spray probably is better. But what I like to do is wax it. And I don't use the expensive stuff when I'm doing a project like this. The expensive stuff is Dorland's wax, which is designed for fine art. This is chalk paint wax. It's designed for furniture, but it works fine and it's way, way cheaper. Let me just show you. So it's a paste, just white paste. You're looking for the clear stuff. And which one shall we do? Oh, I don't know. This one. You literally just rub it in, very thin amount, not a big lump, just rub it in. It will not smear the watercolour because watercolour is not wax soluble. You let it cure or dry, which, depending how warm it is where you are, might take an hour, might take a little longer. Once it's dry, you can leave it as it is and it'll stay pretty matte. But what I like to do is get a clean cloth, give it a little buff, and it gives just a little shine to it. Not glossy, just a sheen. You might find this easier to do before you've stuck it down. That's up to you. I mean, if we get wax on the surrounding paper, doesn't matter at all, does it? If you don't like the feel of the wax on your hand, or you're concerned about solvents in the wax, depends the sort that you're using, just use a clean cloth to rub it on, or you can even get a little brush and rub it on. And this will not stick to your book. People quite often say, oh, that will get all over the pages instead. It dries hard, it dries clear, it's not sticky, and it doesn't, I've never had it sort of melt and go sticky, even when I've left paintings in a car on a hot day. So do not worry that this is going to stick to your book and you're going to get sort of greasy marks. You will not. So as we do this, let's just remember what we did. Those were the printy ones that we then filled in. Those were with the toilet roll middle that we then put the gold on top. These were freehand. And then we've got our big hearts that we drew and cut out and then painted, either with or without writing, with or without some sort of line work on top. And don't forget, you could do this with absolutely any shape. So circles would be super, squares, rectangles. All that remains is for you to decide who you're giving them to. maybe write that little message and then give them to your Valentines.